housekeeping home, where my music's playing home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Every day's an endless.
I did come here and about 8 years ago to do master's work, and my research project I picked was this period and how the staff at the Daily Egyptian responded to the turmoil on campus at that time. And I thought I knew everything about the story to begin with, so I figured it'd be an easy project since I'd worked with Kathy Spiegel and Rich Davis and Tom and some other SIU grads in Evansville for many years. And they had told me story after story after story about what happened in the spring of 1970 at Carbondale.
My name is Mike Klein, K-L-E-I-N. I worked at the Daily Egyptian from 1968 in the fall through August 1972.
Hi, I'm Kathy Spiegel. I worked at the DE beginning in September of 70 until I graduated a year later. June. I am forgetful. June of 70 until September 71.
There you go.
There I go.
I'm Sue Lindsay. I was Sue Roll when I worked at the DE, and that was between 1970 and 72.
And I'm Steve Brown. I worked at the Daily Egyptian in part of 68, 69, and 70, and 71 when I graduated. Part-time as a student worker in the back shop, later on as a reporter, and I think finally sort of an editor. 40 years ago this month, as the protests of the Vietnam War on college campuses started to escalate, the U.S. government invaded Cambodia, which was just another escalation of that war in Vietnam. Campus protests gained a new momentum, new velocity. I like to believe it also started around the 1st of December of 1969 when men who were eligible to be drafted all got lottery numbers, and which pretty well guaranteed if you had a low number, you were going to go in the military once your college deferment was over. That was the last excuse people had for not going in the military. And I think that set a real tone for then the spring of 1970. In early May 1970, campus protest at Kent State University in Ohio led to the tragic shooting of, I believe, 4 students by National Guardsmen there that just escalated the protest. Here on campus, there were daily rallies outside the library, boycotts of classes, marches down South Illinois that ultimately led to confrontations with first the local police, then the state police, then the Illinois National Guard. One particularly violent incident where there was some rock throwing at the law enforcement. The police then gassed the crowd, and the crowd came back up toward the campus and knocked out nearly every window in every business along the way. Things just spiraled out of control, and ultimately the university officials closed the school down, ending the semester early and sending everybody home.
The 60s and what was going on in the South, through an extremely turbulent 1968, through the events as Steve has described in 69, what was going on overseas, and in the spring of 70, what goes on at Kent State. You had a nation that was pretty much, it was ready to explode. It did not take a lot for the tinderbox to go.
Well, and it was the shooting of students.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the big, I think
Everyone felt vulnerable.
Very vulnerable, and that it was inconceivable that our own citizens would be gunning down students who were exercising their rights to protest.
I can still smell and feel the tear gas all these years later. I still have I can tell you exactly where I was the first time I experienced tear gas. I was standing in front of what used to be the Stevenson Arms Dorm, which is where I lived, and I can't tell you exactly what was happening all around us, but suddenly there was this massive presence of tear gas, and the physical feeling of that, you don't forget.
The mood had turned very ugly in a very short amount of time, but most students did feel very uncomfortable because of what had happened at Kent State. At the time, I was living in a dormitory, Baldwin Hall. I think it's still there. And many of the women who lived there were from Southern Illinois. And their parents had all shown up and packed them off. My parents were in Alaska. They didn't know what was going on. Or they might have come and gotten me, but campus suddenly started getting emptier. I don't know if you all remember that. Mm-hmm. It was a very ominous kind of feeling, and when people had had enough,